Good morning, Bimblers. You join me here at Llandudno Junction, or Llandudno Junction. You're going to have to excuse me today, because I'm probably going to pronounce things wrong. But today, we're off on an adventure going up the Great Orme, and you'll be glad to know that I'm wearing the appropriate footwear, which is Adidas Gazelles. I forgot to put my walking boots on. It sounds like the beginning of an episode of Casualty. Let's hope it's not. Let's bimble.
I've got doors opening.
You join me at the toll gate for Marine Drive. And Marine Drive is the road that goes all the way around the Great Orme. And that's how we're going to get up to the top today. We could go up on the cable cars, but that's cheating. Plus I'm too tight to pay for them. And we could walk up through something called Happy Valley, which is a very leisurely park that goes up to the top. But we're going to go a much more interesting way. And before I start my mission up to the Great Orme, we should probably explain why it's called the Great Orme. It was the Vikings that named it the Great Orme. And Orme is Old Norse for sea serpent or sea monster. And Orme is actually where we get the word worm from today. Back in the olden days, in the Viking and Norse days, they used to call monsters, dragons, giant snakes, big things that came out of the sea, worms. And you had things called worm slayers. We've talked about them before. We talked about Roger the Worm Slayer. And he lived in Silverdale in Lancashire, by Hawes Water. And I'm not calling him a liar, but I think what he might have done is found some old dinosaur bones, or the bones of a giant snake from dinosaur times. And then someone asked him, "What's them massive bones?" And he went, "Oh, that's that big worm that I killed, you know, that big monster. Yeah, I killed it because I'm well hard." You might be under the impression that it's always been called the Great Orme since the Vikings came, but it hasn't. For hundreds of years, people called it all kinds of different names, all derived from the name Gogarth. And it wasn't until the Victorians came to Llandudno and made it a seaside resort that they thought the Great Orme would give it more gravitas. And it certainly does. Our mission to the top of the Great Orme sounds a lot more impressive than our walk up to the top of Gogarth Hill. So it's time for this intrepid explorer to leg Bimble to the top of the Great Orme. Let's Bimble.
Big plans are easiest to make. Aim for the stars, it's yours, just wait. Best along the way, but it's those arms that told me I don't care if it's yours or mine. Without you it's just a waste of time. You showed me from the start, such inspirations need a heart to bring you round. It could be ours, big aspirations need a heart to hold you, heart to hold down. Though some get lost along the way, as sure as night designed the day, as long as I'm allowed to say, it's my heart that told me I don't care, you just disagree. Without you it wasn't meant to be. You showed me from the start, such inspirations need a heart to bring you round. It could be ours, big aspirations need a heart to hold you, heart to hold you. I don't care, you can say what you like. I'm a peace-loving person, but I know I'm right. It's as easy as right from wrong. I'm a lover, not a fighter, so I wrote this song. You showed me from the start, such inspirations need a heart to bring you round. It could be ours, big aspirations need a heart to hold you, heart to hold you down. From the start, such inspirations need a heart to bring you round. It could be ours, big aspirations need a heart to hold you, heart to hold you down.
Bimblers, we're 3/4 of the way up to the top, and we've stopped here at the Church of St Tudno. I've been calling him St Tudno for ages, but it's actually pronounced St Tudno. Just like it's not Llandudno, it's Llandudno. Who is St Tudno? St Tudno is where Llandudno gets its name from. And you may be saying, well, Didno, Tudno, that's D's and T's, they're not the same. It's one of them things. A little bit like Priest Town. Priest Town gets said that many times and it gets wrote down by different people. Eventually it becomes Preston. And it also becomes Prestatyn. Both Preston and Prestatyn both started out with the same name. It's a bit like the fellow that's selling the Manchester Evening News. He starts off at the beginning of the day saying Manchester Evening News. By the end of the day, he's saying hey man, you. Or if you like the Lancashire Hot Pots, he's saying hip me do. Llandudno basically means village around the church of St Tudno. And St Tudno was the 7th son of a man called Seithenyn, King Seithenyn. And apparently he's famous for his drunken ways. He was the king of a place called Cantre'r. And apparently that sunk into the sea. It was supposed to be around Cardigan Bay. And King Seithenyn was in charge of closing the sea locks. But he had one too many and forgot. And apparently the whole village sunk into the sea. They call it the Welsh Atlantis. And like Atlantis, there's no real evidence to support it being there. But it's a nice tale. But it's said that St Tudno was one of his 7 sons. And St Tudno was forced to go and study at a monastery in Bangor. And he was forced to go and do that to atone for his father's mistakes, his drunken mistakes. I hope none of my sons have to atone for any of my drunken mistakes. Why do you have to study as being a priest, Kieran's son? Well, my dad called the wrong person a bellend via text message, so here I am. When he finished his studies, he moved to the hills of the Great Orme, or Gagarth as it would have been called at the time. And he started living as a hermit in one of the caves. That's about the level of housing you get for finishing your university degrees these days. But over time we built a church here. This isn't the same church. This church was built in the 12th century to replace the one that he built in the 6th century. The people of Llandudno still celebrate St Tudno. And they have what's called St Tudno's Day on the 5th of June every year. And all the kids get a day off school, apparently. His church here is still in use, and they still have services on Sundays. And they still use the cemetery to the side. And apparently in the old days, they used to bring the coffin up on the Great Orme Tramway. Speaking of the Great Orme Tramway, let's leg Bimble.
Maybe it didn't work at the time, maybe it never did. A mistake that made the distance, or a trying way to live. Maybe it's the time that you grabbed at my arms and electricity flowed from my shoulders to palms in a white hot glow, leaving white cold scars left bare and unshown just to prove they were ours. Maybe it worked, maybe it never did, maybe it never was quite like how it is.
In 1898, an Act of Parliament was put together, allowing a tramway to be built up to the top of the Great Orme. And that Act of Parliament was imaginatively titled the Great Orme Tramway Act of 1898. It was originally conceived to get goods up to the top of the Great Orme, There's quite a few farms around here and quite a few mines as well. In fact, just over there is the biggest Bronze Age mine in the world. But we're not talking about mines today. That's for a different day. It's all about trams today. They started building the tramway in 1901, and all the track, all the cable that pulls the tram cars up to the top, and all the tram cars were all built in Widnes, and they were built by a company called R. Whites and Sons. They sound like secret lemonade drinkers to me. The tramway is actually split into two sections. There's a section that goes from Victoria Station, named after Queen Victoria, down at the bottom in Llandudno. And that goes up through the streets until it gets to here, the halfway station. And then you actually have to get off and get on a different tram that then takes you up to the summit, to Summit Station. If you were in your coffin going to get buried at St. Tudno's Church, you would have to get off here. And nowadays people just use the tram cars to get up to the summit so that they can buy an ice cream or go in the cafe. I don't know what the original fare cost when it first opened, but I do know how much it cost to get your coffin up here. It was 2 shillings and 6pence, and they used to charge every one of the mourners going to the funeral as well. So death was a bit lucrative for the Great Orme Tramway. Nowadays it costs about £12 for a return. So we'll be walking back down.
Your lips as you waited for mine in the soft red glow of your soft cold arms. Serotonin burnt holes through my veins to my heart. Maybe it worked, maybe it never did, maybe it never was quite like how it is. Maybe it's the time that I wanted to say that my limbs won't move more than 2 feet away from your day glow side luminescent sparks. I could burst into flames from one beat from your heart. Maybe it worked, maybe it never did, maybe it never was quite like how it is. Maybe it worked, maybe it never did, maybe it never was quite like how it is. And I quite like how it is.
Well, Bimblers, mission accomplished. We've reached the summit. If that doesn't earn me some fish and chips, I don't know what does. And all we've got to do now is get all the way back down and go and see if British Eagle's okay. Homeward Bimble.